Today on We Need to Talk, we cover part 2 of our talk with Wingate from the Roll With Me podcast about D&D adventures, and this time we tell some stories, and it's gonna be good.
Actually, I've got two good ones just off the top of my head that are about the same character, and I played this character. His name is Jack the Giant Slayer. Picture, if you will, a halfling, hobbit, if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings. Although we can't call it a hobbit in D&D because Wizards of the Coast and J.R.R. Tolkien are two separate entities. So, copyrights. Picture, if you will, a halfling, short little guy, clad in leather armor. He's got a rapier. He's got a dagger. He's got a pet rock. And not like rock, like a bird, like giant Greek mythological bird. It's massive. If it flies too close to the ground, it blots out the sun. Thing's insane. It's a baby, so it's a large-sized creature. It's like 10-foot long bird with like a 22-foot wingspan. It's awesome. So Jack the Giant Slayer got into some choice situations over the years. I played him for like 5-6 years, and one of them we were in a dungeon. The first big one. We were in a dungeon doing a dungeon crawl, and we found this goblet. And the goblet was filled with some like black red ichor. They seemed to be gross, thick, viscous. Kind of like almost not sitting in this golden chalice, right? So the paladin of the group, my buddy Sean, says, all right, nobody touch that. That seems pretty fucked up. So I said, I kind of want to touch it. So I went over and I went to touch it. So he said, hold on, let me just cast Detect Magic on this first. Oh yeah, it's magic. Okay, let me just read aura on it first. Oh yeah, it's pretty evil. It's real evil. There's a lot of evil energy just in that cup, just sitting there, just radiating from the cup. He goes, okay, yeah, don't touch that thing. And I start experimenting with the cup while he's not looking, while the paladin's not looking. And I say to the DM, I say, okay, I want to turn this thing upside down. I want to pour the blood out of it. And he says, you turn it upside down and nothing comes out. It appears empty. Oh, it's cool. So I flip it right side up. I stick my finger in it. Well, your finger can't go past the seal, like the rim of the goblet. Oh, well, this seems very magic, very strange, and very evil. I'm going to drink it. So I tried to drink it. The paladin gets really, really mad. And what the paladin does is he shoots a little blast of energy or something, a little magic, knocks the goblet out of my hands and into a pit full of like sewage and shit. I was very upset about that. But the DM texted me at the table, and he said, a little fleck of that blood got in your mouth. And it tasted really good. I said, huh, well, that's cool. And so we continue playing. We back next week. We're back again. And he says, hey, remember that goblet that the paladin threw into a pit? It's in your bag. Remember that it was full of blood? It's still full of blood. So I said, okay, I want to take it. I want to drink it. And he says, okay, that's cool. Then we end the session, and we come back the next week, and he says, hey, just so you know, you're feeling a little funny, and you have a dream. Pick a color. He gives me a list of colors. So I picked a color. I can't remember which one it was. This was like 7 years ago, but I picked a color. And he goes, okay, crawl on healing. You have and you have disadvantage when you are in direct sunlight. I became a vampire. Unbeknownst to the rest of my party, I became a vampire. And then I somehow like resisted all of the constitution checks, like rolled really, really well to beat vampirism. So I was just a dampier. So Jack the Giant Slayer, little halfling, little unassuming halfling with a rapier and a giant pet bird, now had all of the benefits of being a vampire with none of the drawbacks.
That's pretty fucking hardcore.
Right. Which this didn't come into play until sessions, like months later. We're in a different dungeon. There's a chasm that we need to cross. And he's like, the paladin's like, shit, how do we build like a bridge? We need to get somebody across. And I'm like, don't worry, I got this. And I just start crawling on the wall. So that's Jake the Giant Slayer number 1. The second one, at the end of this campaign, the DM was trying to kill us all. We were fighting a dragon in its lair. It was like a thunder dragon thing. It was ancient, and it was designed to be a TPK. It was trying to kill all of us. So we're fighting this big, once again, a giant goblet in the center of the room. Jack the Giant Slayer has a thing for fancy cups. Dragon, everybody's going down, and there's like this 10-foot tall goblet in the middle of the room that the dragon is protecting. I'm like, what the fuck is this dragon protecting a goblet? We're all gonna die. Fuck it, I'm gonna see what's in this goblet. So I took my little lasso and I threw it up, and I made my way, and I wasted turns just climbing up the side of this goblet. Meanwhile, this dragon is laying waste to my friends. They're going down, falling unconscious left and right. I'm just a shitty little halfling Dampier climbing up the side of a goblet. And I peer over, and he says it's filled with this like murky, white, golden, milky liquid. Great, I'm gonna jump in. Mm-hmm. So I jumped in, and he's like, "All right, fine, fuck it, whatever." Goes around. My next turn comes around, and I go, "I want to drink some of this stuff." And he just goes, "Okay." Got a book, and he flips through some pages and finds the right page. Doesn't show anybody else. Turns it around, hands me the book, and he says, "Fucking pick one." And on the page, it is a list of boons, and it is a Dungeon Master's Guide. There are like a list of like 12 or 13 different boons you can award to a player that are permanent. They are permanent, like stat builders, stat boosters. Just a buff that stays with you forever. Imagine New Game Plus in a video game. When you beat the game and you start over all of your powers from the original. So I picked the boon of the Stormborn, which is immunity to lightning damage. And immunity to damage from lightning-breathing dragons. And we're in a room with a lightning-breathing dragon that's killing all of our friends. So I say, I'll take the boon of the Stormborn. And he goes, fuck.
Should have thought about that one.
So he puts down all my friends. All my friends are unconscious. I just walk up to a dragon, an ancient dragon, shit-eating grin, pull out my rapier, and just start poking it. And we sit there for maybe 20 minutes just rolling dice back and forth until finally he's like, fuck, I can't hurt you. And I said, yep, and I just killed your dragon.
So unsuccessful murder, but very, very successful halfling.
I fucked his dungeon. Oh, man. Oh, I fucked that dungeon hard.
Okay, so in that instance, was that an instance of the DM not properly planning? Or...
No.
Because they didn't think of that possibility of you choosing a thing that would ruin the dragon.
Yeah, I mean, like, yes, I think it is like an improper planning. All that said, the person who was running that game is in my I've ever played with in my life. He was really just looking for a hard out. He wanted somebody else to take over, start a new game, a fitting end for us. So TP, that's going for 5-6 years. And so he had planned this encounter to kill us all so that somebody else could take over and we'd start something new every week. And either he didn't know that the boon of the Stormborn existed, or he didn't expect me to succeed in the 3 turns it took me to getting up into the goblet, drinking the liquid out of it. There was a lot of very lucky factors that I ran into, a lot of variables. Like, it could have worked out anyway, but it seemed like a surefire way to destroy a party was unleash an ancient dragon on them.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, he wrote in there a way, he wrote in there that goblet, which had that boon, which had that thing. So it kind of almost seems like by design too.
Yeah, it was possible for us to survive because this guy, like I said, he is the best DM I've ever worked with. He wanted to put us in an unwinnable scenario where we would all die. But being a fair DM, he absolutely put in a couple of ways that we could have beat the dragon.
And that's super interesting to me that like you go against everything that would be like the smart thing to do. Like you're just drinking whatever fucking thing you find at the bottom of a dungeon.
Yep. That looks out well.
That looks like blood, and it's definitely magic. Yeah, I'm gonna drink that.
Yeah, and it's totally evil. Fuck it.
It's clearly evil. I'm gonna drink that. And that, I mean, that happens. It happens all the time, and it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
The party recently saved the little boy, right? So to do so, they brought all these materials back to the witch, and the witch threw them all into this cauldron, and she's stirring the cauldron and cackling, and she's like, "Get the boy!" So they go and pick up the boy who's unconscious, covered in burns, bring him over. She's like, "Put him in the pot," and they all look at each other, and then put him in the pot, and she's like, "He has to go all the way under. Put his head under the water." And they're like, "What do we do?" So one of the people just like shoves the little boy's head under the water. She starts maniacally cackling. This witch, she's like, and she's stirring the pot, and the pot's bubbling. It's on fire, bubbling, magically levitating. And then she's like, "Okay, take him out of the pot quick." So they take him out, and he's fully healed. But
Jesus Christ.
They shoved a little boy in a pot made by a witch,
his head under the water,
and put his head. I made them shove his head under the water, and they did it. Like,
they just fucking did it, dude. They
mind blowing.
They'll do that.
These were the new players.
Yeah.
So that's like a whole like what's that experiment where they just like test people's compliance?
Yeah. I mean, it is like that. Absolutely.
Just have some
Stanford prison experiment.
Yeah, something like that.
But yeah, that's kind of strange. So in that instance, were the characters role playing, or were they just kind of like taking direction? Because is that something they would have done? Like their characters would have done?
Apparently.
Huh. I mean, when you're under pressure and you're confused, there's no telling how your character is going to act. You can go and backwards justify it all you want, but I mean, when you're in the moment and under pressure, that's what I said. Like when I said earlier, you get these real senses of camaraderie. Mm-hmm. You get these real senses of pressure and stress too. You know, when you're in a combat or you're in a scenario that is high tension, like for real, and you can be backed into a corner and actually feel scared, even though you know you're sitting at a table eating fucking Doritos. Like
they'd spent to save this little boy. There was no going back at that point.
Yeah.
But it was a fascinating experiment for me to see if I make this seem like the worst possible situation where a witch is cackling while they shove a little boy's head under the water of a boiling cauldron.
Amazing.
Are they going to do it?
What system is this? Was this
5e?
5e, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. My Monster of the Week party just met Bigfoot.
Oh, yeah. Is that obligatory in Monster of the Week?
It might be. My take on Bigfoot. Everybody's got their own take on Bigfoot. My take on Bigfoot happened to be that nobody the monstrous activity and stuff. Mm-hmm. They had never evidence of him, so they thought he was fake. There's an ancient order of like religious like Zoroastrian priests that had also never found any evidence of Bigfoot. A lot of people think that he's, some kind of simian, something, whatever, missing link, whatever, but no proof anywhere, but he actually exists. It's like everybody believes like, oh yeah, vampires are real, werewolves are real, the tooth fairy's fucking real, but Bigfoot, get out of here. But Bigfoot is real. His name is Chud. He's 16 years old. His father's name is Scud. They both love...
Wait. Is that a
reference to Rob Schraub's Scud, the disposable assassin? Yes, it is.
No, I was thinking of Chud, the underground dweller thing.
Oh no, Chud! I named so originally it was the first Bigfoot that I came up with. His name is Scud, which is based on, or which is a reference to Rob Schraub's graphic novel series Scud, the Disposable Assassin, which is incredible if you haven't read it. And I hope they make a movie out of it at some point. It's long overdue. There was a really terrible Sega game, but it, deserves a movie. Rob Schraub's great. He's if you watch Rick and Morty or Solar Opposites or Community, he's Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland's very good friend and directs and voice acts in a lot of their episodes. Anyway, but Chud is his 16-year-old son who loves fried chicken, so they were hanging out with Bigfoot in their underground lair.
I love it.
I
Yeah,
am
Ch-
lost
Go ahead.
right now because we went from like Dungeons and Dragons to like Chud
Bigfoot.
eating KFC.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So another one of the games that I play, the game that I actually run, is called Monster of the Week, which is very similar to D&D, except instead of a D20 system, it's a D6 system. So you roll D6s for your main stats instead of a D20, and it calculates, around there rather than in the higher numbers. Super, super fun. And that's even more collaborative storytelling where you're just kind of like going off of each other and you let your party come up with. All I did was create a town and a few NPCs and say, okay, this is where you live. This is what's happening. Figure it out. And part of the game is like figuring out what kind of monster you're actually hunting, and then how to dispose of the monster or how to get the monster away from your town, kind of thing. While all the while making sure the rest of humanity does not find out about the existence of the paranormal. It's very cool. It's a lot of fun.
Is this like a modern day setting, or is it like a different, like what's the setting in this?
It can be whenever you want. My setting takes place in the fictional town of Raven Creek, California, circa 2020.
Okay. Have you ever played this game, Steve? Like the Monster of the Week type?
No, I haven't played Monster of the Week, but I listened to the Adventure Zone, and they had the Amnesty arc, and they played Monster of the Week, so I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah, season 2 technically of the Adventure Zone, right?
Yeah.
Very, very good.
Yeah, I just re-listened to the whole thing, and it's very good.
It holds up, man. It gets good. It stays good. It was a good podcast. Those McElroy brothers, they're very good podcasters.
They're very good podcasters. I 100% agree. Yeah. What's also interesting to me is like how different groups will do different things. So I'm running two parties simultaneously, and they're both running through the same campaign because I am way too lazy to write two separate campaigns. And it's a fascinating social experiment for me to see how two different groups will do different things. So there's one part where they go down into this well to fix the plumbing system, because they have medieval plumbing in my world. And
awesome.
When they're going down, they stumble upon a slime, and this slime is like acidic. So if it touches any of their weapons, armor, anything, it will disintegrate immediately, instantly disintegrate. So the first party goes down, and the guy who was in the lead of rolled a nat 1 on his perception check. So he bumped into the slime, lost all his clothes he was wearing. Now he's a dwarf, completely naked, lost all his clothes.
Oh, good.
And he lost his axe, which he was holding forward. I'm like, so how are you walking? I'm walking axe out, and I'm just walking sturdy and strong. Lost everything. And then everybody in the party proceeds to go forward, despite having seen this, and use physical attacks. And they all lose pretty much all of their equipment. The other party goes down, rolls a good perception check, sees the slime, does not know that it's acidic, and they all use distance moves, arrows, magic, don't lose a single bit of equipment. Fascinating. The ones who didn't know it would hurt them use the distance. The ones who did know they'd lose equipment used their equipment.
Just did it anyway.
Mind blowing to me. And then of course you have a naked dwarf running around, which is always hilarious.
Okay.
I think that's obligatory too.
So you said they did a perception check. Is that kind of like they can? Is that kind of like how in certain games, like there might be a trap that's hidden, but that trap only reveals itself if you like have a high enough stat?
Yes. So roll a d20 and add your perception modifier. That is how you roll a perception check. When you say, "Oh, yeah, give me a perception check," you roll a d20. You add your perception modifier. Your modifiers are based on your training, your level, and like your interest in the subject. So your class determines when you pick I'm a ranger or a fighter or a rogue, it'll tell you what skills you're qualified to take. If you become trained in a skill or proficient in a skill, it adds a modifier onto your roll. So same in like an attack roll, Say your attack is a +5. You roll a d20 +5. That result is your attack, rather than just a flat d20 every time.
Okay, and is this perception, say, roll that they were doing, Meader, is that like something they're doing actively? Like they had, like, did you make them do that, or did they decide to do that?
So it depends on the situation. You have a passive perception that is used if someone is just walking. Then I would use their passive perception of these are the things that you will just notice automatically.
Speaking of, fuck trying to get anything past a druid. Am I right?
Yeah, it's pretty brutal. But luckily for me, the druid was in the middle of the pack, and they put the person with very low perception in the front. I don't know why. In this situation, he was walking, and he's like, I want to be on the lookout for things that can harm me. So I said, okay, give me a perception check. And what that's going to do is, for the duration of until the next event, give them, this is what you see. And this slime happened to be translucent. So if it had a certain DC, it had a certain number that they needed to hit in order to actually see it. His passive perception would not see it. His passive perception was like a 12 or a 13, and the DC was like a 16. So if he rolled a perception actively because he said, I am looking for enemies, and he rolled a 16 plus, I would say, you see this enemy. And if they rolled under that, then they wouldn't see the enemy. In this case, he rolled a 1, which means I get to take an action that actively harms them in some way. I chose not to make it actually do damage, but rather he loses equipment, which he gets back to town, he buys more equipment. Like, that's not, it's a very short-term punishment, but it also adds for some really interesting tactics now that their a barbarian doesn't have their equipment, doesn't have their actual things to use, and you have a naked dwarf, which is always fucking funny.
That's the thing about encounters is like one of my more recent episodes of Roll With Me, we talked about balancing encounters, and one of the big things to do, like, think of it like a video game. You walk in, there's the big boss, right? And whether the big boss has a literal naval fuck ton of hit points, or if it every once in a while just becomes indestructible and sends out minions for you to fight. All of those little things. So you ever play one of those games where you're fighting the big boss, big boss battle, oh man, and then there's a break and it cuts and the boss takes a step back and you can't reach him for a second and he sends some minions for you to fight. Yeah. That's the whole thing about building encounters. It's pick any style of video game boss, throw it together, and that's what you get. The beauty of D&D is, instead of playing a video game where you're sitting, in my case, playing fucking Red Dead Redemption 2, playing cowboys, right? Sitting on my bed smoking weed. I'm by myself, playing shoot 'em up GTA, right? GTA in the Old West. Yeehaw Skyrim. And I run into my quote unquote boss fight. It's the fucking Lemoyne bandits or whatever. And great. I do my gaming. I have a good time. Huzzah! I beat them. I feel decent. I'm gonna smoke another bowl. But
that's the right reaction.
Right. But I go and I hang out with my friends. Even now in the pandemic where it's all remote. Even sitting on Discord in a group chat, a video chat like we're doing right now. With 5 or 6 of us. Sitting at our computers, sure, I'm still sitting on my bed smoking weed. What are you gonna do? It's my brand. But now I'm talking with my friends, I'm interacting with my friends, and then we go into this boss fight, and shit, it's a dragon, right? And we fight this dragon, we work together, and we have these like pack tactics, and we create this battle structure, and we go through this whole process of victory together. And there's a very real sense of accomplishment and a very real sense of pride that is shared among your group of friends, even though all we did was sit back, smoke weed, fuck off, and roll dice.
Mm-hmm. It's really fun telling a story together, working together. but also working autonomously at the same time. It's really, really fun.
Absolutely.
And I take that as a role in DM and as a player, where you're working together to tell this story and to have a good time, and it really, really is a whole lot of fun to do. What's also really cool is, and there are so many D&D podcasts. I actually haven't heard too many D&D like interview shows. So like that's what Roll With Me is so cool, that it's along the same vein, but it's very different and it's super interesting.
Thanks. I mean, that was the idea, is that, there are so many, but like adjust all my stuff now that my computer's dying. There are so many real play shows, and there are so many like D&D educational shows, like even Critical Role does a special called Between the Sheets, where
Interested.
Between the character sheets, Pepin. So where people will
that didn't
will get together. Nope, didn't change anything. They're still between these. That's fine. Where the members of Critical Role, a couple of them will sit down and talk about mechanics and talk about how they've built their characters and how to play the game. Informational, educational episodes of Critical Role, which are really, really cool. I wanted. I couldn't find one. Everybody's doing real plays, which are great because I listen to them and I think they're great. Or everybody's doing how-tos. Also great because everybody needs to learn. Well, why don't you just take them and mash them all together and make an all-encompassing one? I don't see any podcasts that break down Monster of the Week and also Call of Cthulhu and also Lasers and Feelings and Honey Heist and Dr. Magnet Hands, all the fuck it. There are so many hundreds and thousands of RPGs that are out there. You see Pathfinder, you see Call of Cthulhu, and you see Dungeons and Dragons. Sometimes you see Monster of the Week, like in the Adventure Zone. But people don't cover all of them. People want to talk about their game that they play, which is great, and I love that. What I want to do is sit down and, if I interview you on my show, I want to know what your relationship is to tabletop role-playing in general. Tell me about your love of Dungeons & Dragons, because most people play Dungeons & Dragons if they're in the tabletop RPG culture. Now let's talk about a game you've never heard of. That's kind of my formula. Like, tell me a story. Tell me why you love it. What's the most important thing about it to you? And then, what does it mean? What does it mean for all of us? Because it's so culturally relevant. Like I said, we have athletes and actors and just nerds. We have lab technicians and scientists and people who are in all different careers, all different walks of life that are and have been playing role-playing games for escapism, for entertainment, for anything. I mean, these games have stuck with us for, Jesus, it's 2020. These games have stuck with us for 50 years for a reason. Mm-hmm. So my goal is for listeners to, when they hear this show, when they hear Roll With Me, is for them to learn something new, or find a new way to appreciate role-playing, or just be entertained by the fun stories. You can listen to the show if you have never played before and you want to learn how to play, because there's instructional all the way through. It's instructional of how to build a character, how to how-tos on how to DM. If you have been playing and DMing for 30 years, but maybe you want to learn a new house rule or a new fun little mechanic or something you may have never seen coming down the road that's just been hiding away in 4th edition. Something like that. Little fun rules and tips and tricks. You want to pick those up? Listen to the show. It's an all-encompassing show about tabletop role-playing games because I love them and I want to learn more about them. So I want you to learn more about them too.
And I think that really comes across very well executed, very high quality, very much suggested by me personally. So definitely go check out Roll With Me. What I have, so when we're doing all this remotely, like you said, we're doing it through Discord. when I'm playing D&D. So with this group, it's really cool because there are a lot of actual play podcasts. So it's fun to actually just like listen to a story.
Yeah.
It's fun to just be a fly on the wall during a session. So it's actually an open Discord where I can let people in to just listen while we record sessions.
Oh yeah.
Or while we're playing sessions. And there's a couple people who are doing that, and they come and they actually listen in to the sessions. And then we also have the ability, really, really cool, to let them be a part of it by being an NPC. So I nice. because as a DM you have to be every character that's not one of the player characters. I have now written characters that my friend Langel comes in and he's not one of the 6 party members, and I would love to have more people, but 6 is a lot of people to manage.
6 is a lot, dude. I'm working with 5 right now, and that's a lot.
6 is a lot of people to manage. Imagine 8. It's mind-blowing. I'm not a good enough DM to manage 8 people. So instead, you're on the 6 players, or with the 6 players.
Yeah.
So they play different characters who pop up once in a while and do different things.
Yeah.
One of them plays a dragonborn named Miss Vars, and she's the mayor of the town. And I'm like,
cool.
Write whatever you want. This is your character, and this town's got walls all around it. Made her pretty much Donald Trump, and nice. It's really fun because he's like he makes him. It's like super loose Donald Trump, but then takes it to like 110. Like way past 11.
I don't think I'd ever want to see super loose Donald Trump at 110.
So just make the most despicable human being, or the most despicable being you can imagine, that's still like not a evil person. It's amazing. So all the characters hate her, but also they're like, but she is kind of doing some good things. So like, we can't kill her because she is at the same time. They love the person who's playing that character. And then there's another character that he plays that has the voice of Macho Man Randy Savage, which is super distinct.
Good, brother.
Yeah. and they were like this old man in the first episode who just randomly disappeared, and now he just like uses his disembodied voice whenever he wants. And do whatever you want. So I just to retcon it, I'm like, that's the voice in your hearts. And so he can just say whatever he wants whenever he wants, and he just throws in jokes. It is so much fun to be able to include other people, so I don't have to do all the voices.
That's really nice. I haven't incorporated that yet. I've been an NPC for other DMs before. I've been like, oh, will you come in and fill in with this character? Because I've played dozens and dozens of characters over the course of my gaming career, and somebody would be like, remember that character you played back in fucking 2011? Like, maybe he might be a good choice to bring in as an NPC for this game, which is great. Or creating something new is always super fun. I haven't incorporated like listener interaction like into the show yet. We do some real play episodes. One of the more recent episodes of Roll With Me was a take from when we were trying out Call of Cthulhu, which was a lot of fun, using the Monster of the Week party, which was just wild and zany. And we will be doing a lot more of that. Once we start our next arc of Monster of the Week, I'll be doing real play episodes through Roll With Me as well. That is an open channel Discord server. Can go on and watch us make the rolls, see the imagery that I put out there, and they can listen live and listen to us play, warts and all, which is a lot of fun.
That's really exciting. It's so much fun too to be able to hear it live too, because sometimes when you're listening to a show like the Adventure Zone and stuff like that, a lot of times they cut out a lot of the in-between stuff, which is fine, probably what you want from a polished show like that. But there's a lot of stuff that like happens in the in-between that's a lot of fun to see and to be a part of.
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, the episode that I just put out in Vampire in Paris was a real play episode of our Monster of the Week campaign in Call of Cthulhu, one that I was just talking about. But I mean, it ended up being about 2.5 hours. It was 4.5 hours of material, and I spent 16 or 17 hours editing it down. Like, that's how much hits the cutting room floor.
Wild.
And you're still getting the full story.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a lot of fun. Pepin, tell me what are your thoughts on D&D now? Now that you've heard quite a bit different, what's different in your mind than what you were expecting, and what's the same? Is it pretty much like you thought it was?
To some degree, it's a little bit different. It makes me want to play. Is essentially is the main thing, because it's I kind of want to get my feet wet or my hands dirty, and I don't know if this is just my personality, but like DMing sounds a lot of fun to me, because I'm kind of like Meader. I'm a little bit of a control freak, and I'm more of a facilitator than I am a player. A lot of times, I like to make sure people are having fun. I don't like having fun myself, because that seems like too much. So, but it definitely seems like it would be very interesting. I do like the roleplay aspect, and I don't know, if I could join a group at some point, that would be, I think, a lot of
Hey, Friday nights, 7 p.m. If you're ever available, let me know. I'll get you in as an NPC. You can see how everything works. Or if someone drops out, we'll get you in.
Okay. See, there you go. You got the in right now.
I can have you as an NPC to start out. You can get your RP down. And
that is a good way to get your feet wet. Yeah.
Ooh, do I get to talk?
Also,
what's that?
Do I get to talk? Do I just be like, hey, I'm an NPC?
Yeah. That's a really good idea.
Typically, all you do is talk.
That's a really good idea as an NPC. You should be like, hi, I'm an NPC. My name, whatever. Doesn't matter. Here's your quest. All right. See you in 3 episodes.
That's great. It's funny because I'm going to be doing some more episodes, actually, that are not from my campaigns, but there are some new RPGs coming out right now. And if I can do a shameless plug here, Jetpack Comics is my like big sponsor for Roll With Me. Jetpack Comics and Games in Rochester, New Hampshire. Great place.
I've been there. That place is amazing.
I was going to say, yeah,
I love them.
Yeah. I just
love those.
Passed by them yesterday.
Yeah,
they are
street.
They're amazing. And they have, so the owner of Jetpack, Ralph, who's like just the coolest guy ever, and his son was actually my first guest on my show. So Ralph has tasked me with reviewing new RPGs and new games that are coming to the store, so that they can have like firsthand testimonials for people who want to buy new games and try new things out. And I have received a couple of games from Jetpack to play test and review, and I'll be doing some new episodes about that. So if you guys ever want to hop on and play some sort of silly role-playing game with me and some friends, and we can review and make that happen, I'm sure Jetpack Comics would be very happy to see that.
I'm 100% on board for that. That sounds awesome.
It sounds very cool. Very cool. Yeah, they're right down the road. They're very local. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, the name of the show is Roll With Me.
It sure is.
Head on over. Michael Wingate CV, the Doctor. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to see you boys.
You as well, for sure. And thank you to the audience as always. And you can find Roll With Me anywhere you get podcasts. I personally use Apple Podcasts, and they're not paying me to say that yet.
I personally use Spotify, and they are paying me to say that.
Nathan, tell me something about Dungeons and Dragons that you learned today.
So I learned that when you first enter a dungeon, you roll a perception check, and then you see if you should go forth and venture, and then you kill everything, and then when the DM complains that your friends are dead right there, you just say, hey, this is the way things are. You know why? Because I'm the dungeon master now.
Nate, we need to talk.